All right, so there's a desperation that is apparent when it comes to the black family, wanting to restore the black community and sort of restore the black family. So I see a lot of people are talking about, I feel like a lot of the media plays on the desperation of single black women. A
I
lot
agree.
of the marketing that we see play on the desperation of single black women. How do we counteract that? And how do we remove that desperation sort of out of our community and sort of restore more traditional principles?
Well, number one, as far as the media goes, we're not required to partake in it. So a lot of that stuff simply needs to be disqualified from the social menu for most black people's lives. We're not required to watch the different shows that promote, the thirsty black female syndrome. And we need to divorce ourselves from that. So as far as the media, we just need to exercise more restraint. As far as how do you eliminate that, I mean, the truth of the matter is black men are rare. They are scarce because of the war against black men. So the black woman's concern that she might not find a mate, it is a very legitimate concern that can't be ignored. But I think that we could help control that concern to some extent if we were to organize marriage and if we were to organize dating in the community. That doesn't mean get involved in everybody's business, but we do need some structure that will allow women an opportunity to date without being taken advantage of, and will allow men an opportunity to date without having their characters assassinated if they don't decide to stay with that woman. So there needs to be some sort of protocol in place. I think it begins with the elders. I think that all brothers and sisters should go through a mandatory training program, socialization system that prepares them for marriage. You just don't wake up and say, I want to get married, even though marriage is natural. Just like you don't just wake up and say, I want to have a baby. You need to learn how to take care of a child. So I think we need systems in place that are not there. But we suffer from radical individualism. We do not see ourselves as part of a community or a culture. We see ourselves as a plethora of individual nations. Every black person is their own sovereign nation. They're not interested in linking up with another black person. We believe in this concept of privacy that I think is debilitating the black community, because we don't discuss the issues that need to be discussed because everyone wants to stay so private, even though everyone's dealing with the same types of situations. I think that a lot of this can be alleviated. I think that black men have to be held more accountable for their dating behavior with black women, but I think black women have to be held accountable as well. I think that it's not fair for the black men to often be put as the butt or the sole person or population responsible for the failure of relationships. Being a therapist, speaking as a therapist, women do a lot of wrong things to men too, but they never get highlighted the way that they do when men do wrong things to women. So we got to be more fairer in assigning responsibility when relationships are not successful. Every black woman waiting to get married is not necessarily of the quality of woman that a man would necessarily want to make his wife. And every brother is not just someone who's just, hungry for a sister's, physical gifts without wanting to entertain her intellectual prowess as well. So we got to bring balance to the conversation, but again, structure. Bottom line is you got more men than women. You have more women than men. Something has to be done about that. I don't think everyone needs to be polygamous. No woman wants to share her husband. But if you look at our situation, to not have a conversation, a serious and responsible conversation about polygamy without enough men to go around, then you're going to constantly see the withering away of black sisterhood. When I look around at black women, one of the biggest issues I see eroding the sisterhood. Not that it's always been great, but it was better than what it is now. And that's the competition for the limited pool of black men that's out there. And again, going back to being a therapist, I've seen everything from sisters to cousins, mother, daughter. I mean, women fighting, catfighting, relationships ending over a small pool of men because they're competing for the same man's attention. Something has to be done about that because it's creating romantic anarchy in the black community.
Okay. I think if we talked about polygamy, we would probably be here all night. But I do want to sort of delve into it because you brought it up. Because you said we need to have a serious conversation about it. I think that we jump to that particular, like I hear in what is called the conscious community, we hear that is the first solution. That's the first solution we hear. Like, oh, there are not enough black men, so let's let's entertain polygamy. But for me, I don't think that structure works because of all of the other conditions that we're in. So whereas I have met people in polygamous marriages from other countries, but they're not in the same economic situation that we're in. They are not in the same social situation that we're in. So maybe it's A, legal in their country, and B, they can afford, to have. I have 3 wives, and this wife is able to go to law school, and this wife is able to do this, and this wife is able to do this because I have the financial means to sort of do these things. And I think in our country, we're not there. A, because it's illegal, and B, because we don't have the economic and social power to institute something as radical as polygamy.
I don't agree with that because we already have polygamy. Very few men are monogamous. Black, white, rich, purple, rich or poor. We already have it in the black community. Many men have children with different women. There's many plural relationships that exist in the black community. I also don't think you have to marry the state to get married. I know a lot of people in polygamous relationships, happy ones, but I would say that I don't think we're ready for it right now. I think you have to prepare for that. I think a lot of paradigm shifting has to take place on both the parts of black men and black women for polygamy to be successful. I was raised Muslim. My father was not polygamous, but there's a lot of polygamy in Islam, and I've seen women get taken advantage of by it. So I am very, very aware of why a lot of black women look at polygamy with skepticism, and that's because most of them are only familiar with polygamy from the Islamic, the Hebrew, the Moorish, the Christian, the patriarchal type of polygamies that we see in major Western religions. They really haven't seen it from an African-centered, feminine perspective. In many African cultures that are maternalistic, polygyny was actually instituted by the females. It was not instituted by the men. It was the women who said that they wanted their sisters to have the same type of opportunities that they had. So it's very maternalistic in African society. But again, men have to be more responsible. Men do have to be able to provide. They have to be more above board with it. It cannot be a secret polygamy. If you have 2 wives, the whole community should know who they are. I think there needs to be elder oversight so men don't take advantage of it. But polygamy would not work now for the greatest reason being that black women have issues with black women. It's not the man, it's the sisterhood. Polygyny only works when the sisters want it to work. And with the competition amongst black women, I think we're a far cry away from polygamy now. The brothers got to make changes, but until sisterhood is what it needs to be, it will not work. The women involved have to love each other more than they love that man in order for that unit to work. But I know a lot of polygynous situations that are very healthy and very successful. But again, you have to prepare for that. That's not something you do tomorrow.
And the ones that I have seen that are successful, that may be in America, what I learned, because I spent some time actually in a polygamous group of women, of sisters, and I wanted to understand that culture. Like right around the time I got married, I was just curious. And what I noticed is that they were brought up in the ones that were really successful were brought up in other polygamous relationships, so that maybe their father was polygamous and their mother had sister wives, and so that then they grew up in a culture thinking like, when I grow up I'm gonna have a sister wife, and they knew that culture.
I think that makes it easier, but with any institution, if you want it to work, it'll work. If you don't, it won't. I don't think it's for everybody, but I do think the black community can no longer ignore it because it exists. I mean, most men, most women even, are in plural relationships. And so it's interesting how it's so taboo to discuss it or consider it, but it's okay for it to operate under the table in silence around the corner.
Right,
it's
but those
here.
aren't necessarily polygamous. I would say they're plural, but they're not polygamous. Because when we talk about it, to me, I thought, okay, well, when I look at the gay rights, when they went to get gay marriage, I was like, well, the polygamous people should be arguing for a different wording. Do you know what I mean? So that it could be legal, because if this sister wife can't pick up my son from school because she's not a legal guardian, then it's really not polygamy. It's just a plural relationship. Or if this sister can't get insurance because only one of us can get insurance, to me, those are the things that sort of make it polygamous when it's all in the open. Like you said, in society where it's known this wife and this wife are both married and they have the same rights to everything. Mm-hmm. I think that's where, for me, it gets kind of like, well, that's not really the same. And I mean, if my husband and I were to take on somebody else into our marriage, I'm already here. I'm legally married to him, so I'll have these rights, and then this sister won't have these rights. And so are we really anything, or is there a hierarchy, and is that okay? So
well,
to
you
me,
can
that's
still
the
be
difference.
because you can do marriage through a contract. You don't have to get legally married in order for the wife to benefit the way a wife would benefit through a marriage through getting a marriage license. You can get the same types of rights, privileges, and benefits through a contract. A lot of brothers I know who are in plural marriage, they're married to the women through contracts, not through a marriage license. So you can have more than one woman receive the same type of benefit.
That's really interesting.